Mike Kelly, Mr. Code Monkey Mike. It's awesome to have you here because not only is what you're doing really inspiring to me, but I'm ridiculously excited about telling other people about it and watching it grow and watching it make an impact on people's lives.
You're part of my Linux origin story of like watching like content. You know, Linux for Everyone is kind of like what I am doing right now. So it's like it couldn't be a more fitting place for me to do kind of my first interview as an official nonprofit, which we got approved yesterday.
Dude, congratulations. Seriously, congratulations on that. If you don't mind, like, can you kind of give us a brief rundown of your full Linux origin story? Like, what inspired you to get into Linux, or what was the gateway?
You know, this is so fun, Jason, because my Linux origin story actually kind of commingles and becomes the genesis of the Computer Upcycle Project and this whole thing too. So I see how much gray you have in your beard, so I think we're of the same vintage. I was born in 81, so like I know you're a little older, but anyway, I grew up with kind of, you know, the computers tinkering around, you know, like my first computer in my house was 88, 89. Like you turned it on and it was just C:/DOS.
Yep.
So it makes me laugh, all these people that are terrified of the terminal. I'm like, yo, when I was a kid, like that's all we had.
As I've seen kids using computers over the last 4 or 5 years, they're fearless.
Yeah.
They don't have any problem like learning, how do I want to do this? How do I do this?
Yeah.
If it involves this terminal command thing, sure, I'll learn that. Not a problem.
Yeah.
They're not scared of that.
My first programs, and I'm putting in quotes, were like bat scripts so I can get into my games faster. You know, Space Quest, Commander Keen, like all these games. And so anyway, I was just like, but I always loved tinkering around with the computer. So like, but it was MS-DOS. And then of course, Microsoft Windows 95, 98, you know, XP, you know, Microsoft train all the way. And then even after college, my first job, I was like an outsourced tech guy. I think my first bump in with Linux was Ubuntu. I remember you could mail away for the CD. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
I do. Like, I mean, I never did that personally because my origin story started much later, but I remember seeing them. I remember seeing them on newsstands and kind of being really fascinated by it.
I love the live CD aspect of it. And I would kind of keep it in my backpack as a live environment CD to kind of fix Windows problems.
Right.
I love the idea of Linux, right? It was so, I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is like a free open source thing that like people make and it's free, you know, like that's amazing coming from the Microsoft world. Like somebody just gives you this. However, it still was so far from daily drivable for me. It wasn't even funny. It was just a tool that I used here and there. And I think the first win I had with it, and I think it was right before the big housing crisis happened in America.
Okay.
So there was mortgage companies popping up all over the place and they were totally sketchy, boiler room. I was their IT person, you know, for these things. And they would just pop up in an office and like all of a sudden they had like 40 workstations in this like one room office, just cranking out mortgages, just trying to tank the economy. And they did it. What we ran into with these kind of like fly-by-night mortgage companies is they always wanted to share a document drive, you know, and map it as like your Z drive. In Windows, you're only allowed to share a folder with 10 other machines before they make you upgrade to a Windows server. And like they would groan because they're like, I don't want a Windows server. Like that's a whole expense and a headache. And like, we're not trying to run a domain. But that was Microsoft's way of saying, hey, listen, you clearly are in an office environment and we would like you to spend a lot more money. And so I got my brown Ubuntu CD, took one of the old Dell towers that they had, and I installed Ubuntu on there, enabled Samba sharing, and put the shared folder on there. And you know, Linux doesn't care how many people you share that folder with. And so everyone was just like, it was Galaxy Brain, you know what I mean? And the whole company, they're like, wait, what? And so like for a while there, I was literally building these file servers and deploying them to like offices, and they were all just Ubuntu boxes with Samba. It was so easy. It was really kind of funny. So that was my first kind of like win with Linux, where I'm like, oh wow, this is quite useful.
Very cool.
But I still never used it like on the desktop for myself. I was never a Linux user. And then right around when Mac switched to Intel, I fell into the Apple world hard. I had the iPhone, I had the MacBook Pros, I had the Mac Minis, I had everything. You couldn't tell me anything different.
Why?
Yeah.
Why was it? I mean, and I'm not being like combative or
Yeah,
anything, because
no.
I was also a very heavy macOS user. So I'm just genuinely curious, like
Yeah.
what was so compelling about it that you just weren't interested in opening your brain to anything else?
At that job that I was talking about, where I was an outsourced tech person, I got a G4 Quicksilver tower. You know, back in the day,
I remember
Apple was,
those.
yeah, so sexy. I mean, it was in the Windows world, like all we were dealing with was like beige and black towers that were just ugly. And I just loved it. I bought it from someone for $20 because it wouldn't boot up, and I fixed it. And then I had my first Mac, and I was just in love. You know what I mean? I was just in love. And for me, it was Unix-like enough where I was like, oh, I like this. And it was an exit from Microsoft. I really was kind of sick of Windows. Linux was still a pipe dream. And so Mac was it for me. And I became a web developer, you know, and so I've been building websites and doing code for a while. And in that time, like Mac and web development really paired well together. So I just had my system set, and I was good. But around like 2019, 2020, I started kind of falling out of love with Apple. You know what I mean? They had the laptops with the crappy keyboards.
Oh yeah, I had one of those for work, and oh my gosh,
terrible. So the love started fading, and then like the touch bar with no use. And then they took the MagSafe chargers from me. And it's just like all these things kind of added up. And then like the Big Sur update came out and totally broke my dev environment. And they just didn't care. It was in that moment I realized, as long as your needs align with Apple's needs, you'll be okay. But the second those two things diverge, you're screwed because there's no other option. So around this time is 2020. Everyone was in lockdown. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. And we were all stuck at home and bored. It was around this time my parents' laptop died, and they just went and bought a new one. So anyway, so they had this old Lenovo Yoga with one of those stupid hybrid hard drives that fail miserably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it broke on them, of course. You know, the hard drive went bad, and they said, "Hey, Mike, do you want this?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. You know, I'm bored as hell." And so I get it. I figure out, oh, it's the hard drive, easy to replace, grab a Crucial SSD, throw it in there.
Oh, rest in peace, Crucial.
I know. So anyway, I threw an SSD in. Physically, it's fixed, right? But what am I going to do? Am I going to put Windows back on this thing? I didn't want to, right? I was like, you know what? This is a good opportunity for me to play around because it's the pandemic. I got this extra laptop. And so it had been so many years since I played with Linux. I was blown away by how far it had come.
What did you install?
Jason, what did I not install?
You were tinkering. Like, do you also love just installing Linux?
Yeah.
Not even necessarily, just going through the installation process. I don't know, it's kind of warped maybe. Other people are like, you love just installing Linux? Yeah, I enjoy the hell out of that process.
I've joked around the people that I wish my job could be installing Linux on things. And actually, it might someday. We'll get to how how that might happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I distro hop my face off. I mean, Linux Mint, Pop OS, Elementary, Fedora. I mean, you name it. I did all of them. There was at one point, I remember I had like 5 USB drives. I was rotating them, and I was like downloading distros like crazy. I remember my wife coming into my home office and being like, "What are you doing?" It was like the middle of the night. And she thought I was like up to no good in there. And I just have like all these, I have like all these USB drives in my hand. And I'm like, I just got to download one more. But it was fun. I was having fun. You know how this, every person that gets into Linux, they go through distro hopland and they have a good time.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah. I mean, it's a mixed bag, right? But that's part of the enjoyment, right?
I mean, I think I understand the really dramatic improvement that you saw after like 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Because we know, we can see it in just the last 3 years.
Well, I was just going to say from that point to today is shocking how far it's come. So long story short, hopped around on this laptop, played around with Linux. I ended up just settling on like Linux Mint, because everything just kind of worked and it was, a nice clean UI, light enough. And so it's funny, it was like pulling nails to get set up on Mac, but it took like 5 minutes to get my dev stuff set up on Linux because I'm like, well, yeah, it's PHP, Apache, Nginx, like these are all just like table stakes stuff for Linux.
And it essentially, now I'm not a programmer, not a developer really. Did it essentially, like the muscle memory, was that kind of the same? I mean, as far as the command stack and you didn't have to completely relearn everything. Is what I'm saying.
No. And in fact, it was just a lot easier. And in fact, it simplified things a bit because like my SaaS company, Member Vault, runs on the cloud and they're just Ubuntu servers. So when I SSH into the cloud to work on, things in a Linux environment, right? It was actually a lot easier for my brain to be like, I have the same environment locally now that I do on the server. And how cool is that? So anyway, I was able to get my development stuff up and I thought, man, this is really good. And it was so good, in fact. I mean, that laptop was a bit of a dog, but again, it was proof of concept that I could actually use Linux and get work done. And during this distro hopping time, this is how you kind of come into it, right? I start really getting into Linux and I want to like learn all about it and I want to hear about it. So like I'm following YouTube channels like yours. I'm listening to Linux Unplugged, like the podcast. And just hearing you all talk about using Linux on a day-to-day basis normalized it for me. I didn't think anybody actually used it day to day. I thought, okay, we use it in the cloud.
Yeah. I'm just using it as my browser. I'm using it to, sure. I like that you use the word normalized.
Yeah, it did. It really did normalize it because it was not like, oh, this is some weird fringe tinkery thing I play with. This can actually be, there are people daily driving this to get their work done and living on it. And I thought, that's so cool. Wouldn't that be awesome if I could get there someday? And at that time, System 76 also loved them. They released their Lemur Pro laptop.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, their 14-inch super portable laptop. And I bought one. And that was my first purpose, like built like Linux machines. And get this, they don't care if you keep the same distro on there. Like I was playing around with Arch and stuff like that. And I actually ended up like getting into conversations with System 76 support where they would like tell me, oh, here's how you do this in this laptop in Arch. And like some of it was like, I felt bad. I'm like, listen, cool. I know this isn't your job. You can tell me to go away. Because that's the other fear about Linux is that like, okay, I'm going to put Linux on this Dell. And then if I ever have a problem, Dell's just going to blame it on Linux.
You and I, people in the Linux community, people who have a community to fall back on and lean on when they're switching over to Linux for the first time, they're really lucky.
Yeah.
But we cannot lose sight of the fact that there are tons of people who don't have a community to ask these questions to. They just one day decide they need to switch or they want to switch. And they can't just go ask all their followers on Mastodon or,
Right. I'm such an advocate about Linux. Like some people would like ask me like, oh, hey, like what laptop should I buy? And I joked around. I'm like, well, look for this or this. I was like, and if you really are curious, like System 76. And I've had a couple people that are regular people, like not technical people at all, go and buy a System 76 laptop and had a great experience. But people need to know that like there's a little bit of a safety blanket there. You're not just on your own. Like, oh, something's going to break. I'm going to have to recompile my kernel by myself or, that's what people think.
That's what scared me off, scared me away from Linux back when I was doing other podcasts and other projects and stuff I kept seeing these mentions of like recompiling the kernel and going into a command line to like configure the driver for things. And I'm like, no, that's not for me.
I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
If you're listening to this and you're, Linux curious, you don't have to do that stuff anymore. Because that's something we need to normalize is PCs shipping with Linux.
But what happened to that yoga, you might ask? Yeah, right? Because I didn't need it.
What happened to that yoga?
I will tell you what happened to the yoga. That yoga started an entire thing. So I put Linux Mint on there, refreshed it all and everything. And I was like, I don't need this laptop and I don't need the money from trying to sell it. And so I throw it on this Facebook free group and I say, hey, free laptop. It's running Linux, it's not running Windows, but like if you want to get online and like, I don't know, browse the web or do whatever, listen to Spotify, like that kind of stuff, like it's perfect. I thought somebody would take it, right? But I got hundreds and hundreds of replies being like, oh my God, please, what a gift. Thank you. Can I please have this? Remember, this is during the pandemic. And
Okay.
so there's so many stories of people that have like either no laptop or computers in the house, or the whole family's using one. And like the parents are having to work from home. A lot of kids, not every kid gets a Chromebook, right? So like there's a huge need. I had no idea how big the digital divide is out there in the community. Like,
This isn't, this is just in your city,
yeah,
right?
this is in Olympia,
Right.
Washington. This is even
Right.
Seattle. This is like, we're known for being in between Portland and Seattle. Like that's what we're known for.
Well, again, I think it comes back to, the fact that people like us, maybe we take for granted or we lose sight of the fact that not everybody has a whole bunch of computers just lying around to tinker around with.
We absolutely do. Yeah. Yeah. And again, to realize that so many people are like trying to go back to school, do their job and everything from a phone is insane
Oh,
to me.
that's a
And
nightmare.
so anyway, so there was just this huge outcrying of people that wanted this laptop. I wish I had more of them, but I rehomed that one laptop. And also selfishly, I was like, I wanted to stay in touch with these people because I'm like, let me know how you get along with Linux. I was like, because I'm
Right.
so impressed by how easy it is. And like at that moment, I was like, I think normal people can use this. I think Linux is to the point where like, you don't have to be a super nerd to use this. Here's what's interesting. After I rehomed that laptop, that post, a bunch of people messaged me on Facebook and were like, hey, Mike, I love that you just gave away this laptop. I have a couple laptops sitting in my closet in my garage or whatever. I don't know what to do with them. It feels weird to throw them in the trash. I don't want to sell them either and deal with all that. Like, do you want them? And then you can, fix them up and give them out to people. Like, because people saw the need. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. I would be.
Were these just strangers reaching out to you about
Yeah.
this? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. These are just people on a Facebook free group. I mean, we all share the fact that we live in Olympia, but
Sure.
but they don't personally know me. And I thought, hey, all right, this will be a fun little whim, right? But every time I would post a computer, people would reach out and donate computers to me. So this cycle started where like I would donate the computer out, and then a bunch of people would message me,
Pay it forward.
and pay it forward, and be like, hey,
Yeah,
this is great.
yeah.
And if somebody even asked about like, oh, hey, does anyone know where I can get like a cheap computer? Like 20 people would tag me. They're like, oh, no, there's this guy. He just gives out computers. And everyone's like, wait, what? Is this a scam? Like it was really, really funny. And at some point during the pandemic, again, this has been happening over years. I converted like half of my garage into a workstation because I was getting that many computers in.
Can you put a number on it?
Now the estimation is over 1,500 locally here in Olympia.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, it's a lot of computers. And again, these are all computers that were literally just wasting away. And then at some point, a couple years ago, I ended up getting in touch with somebody. I don't forget what the company is, but there's some global company, and the head of IT lives here in Olympia. And so it's his job every year. The company will like ship him all these laptops, and he has to zero out, clear out the drives and get rid of them. And somebody on my behalf reached out to him and said, no, you got to give it to this guy, Mike. He fixes them up and gives them out to people. And so I got in touch with him. And so now about every 6 months to a year, he'll drop me an email and say, hey, I got boxes. And it'll be like 40 Dell Latitudes per box.
Jeez. I'm sure they're perfectly usable still.
They're perfectly
right?
usable. Yeah. Most of them are like 8th to 10th gen i7s with 16 gigs of RAM, NVMe drives. Like, I mean, you and I know.
I have a Dell Optiplex box sitting upstairs, maybe like 3 years ago. Cost me $120, and it doesn't have nearly those specs. But it's now my Plex server.
Yeah, I mean these things cook, and if you think about somebody that's like literally going on, 99% of people, in fact, I would pre-install 3 apps. I would pre-install Google Chrome, I would pre-install Zoom, and LibreOffice. Like that's it. And
Was that difficult for you to install Google Chrome instead of Firefox?
I mean,
I know why. I can guess why
Firefox
you
is
did it.
there. Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what people use.
That's what people use.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You gotta pick. You gotta choose your battles, right? Like I don't want to.
That's fair. Yeah. At this point, is this still just a Mike Kelly project? Doesn't have a. It's not a. There's no website. There's no name for it. Nothing.
No.
You're just.
What happened is around, I guess, a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago now. I realized, and sometimes people would like get a laptop from me, use it, have no problems, great. But then they would like buy a new computer or their life situation changed, right? And
Sure.
instead of just like throwing that laptop away, they would give it back to me. And they're like, hey, I used this for like a year or two. It was great. Give it to somebody else. And I'm
You
like,
got a lot of really nice people in your community.
Olympia's a great place. I like Olympia. It's good. You know what? I'm gonna make the argument that I think those people are everywhere. So I would get these machines back, and I realized something. I realized that nobody does updates. Even though Linux Mint has a little shield, and it's like, hey, click here to update me. People are like, no, go away.
It's not forcing them to do it, and so they don't do it, right?
No, they don't do
right.
it. And that's just, little upgrades. God forbid the version upgrades where you have to go through a wizard. And so like, I'm like, this is not ideal. People love they love Cinnamon, right? It's a very Windows-esque experience. Everything makes sense. Everything is where you expect it to be. It's a boring, interface, but like it's useful, right? Like it's very utilitarian.
Boring means familiar, and familiarity is comfortable. So
absolutely. I don't daily drive Cinnamon, but I 100% think that most people coming from Windows should. So that was interesting. And of course, around the same time, I am falling in love personally with NixOS. And my first talk I gave at any conference was Linux Fest Northwest, I think 2023, on 5 reasons to love NixOS. Like I fell down the NixOS hole hard, and I still am.
We might need to talk about NixOS a little bit for people and now I've never used it personally. I hear about it often. Yeah. In my head, there's 3 different types of distributions, I guess. Or at least on the OS level, there are, one's the majority of them, like Ubuntu, Zorin OS, whatever, Arch,
Yeah.
And those are completely unlocked.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word, they're unlocked. You can change the core system components. You can install whatever you want. You can remove whatever you want. And there's immutable distros like SteamOS, like Bazite, where it's sort of locked down like how you install things and what you can install. Now, how does NixOS differ from those 2 styles?
So it's not just that, right? So your immutable distros like, or Fedora Silverblue, like all these immutable distros, or you don't even have to look that far. You can look at your phone. The reason that your phone never crashes, right? You never like do an update and your phone's unbootable, right? Because it swaps out the image. Like it's just like, oh, right. And that's why your stupid iPhone update or whatever is
huge,
5 gigs, right? Because you're just swapping out one whole system for another whole system, right?
Right.
And it turns out that's a really safe way to do these types of things, and that's what SteamOS does. That's what all these things do.
No, that happened to me recently with Bazite. You've got the 2 images, like the OS1, OS2, or OS Tree 1, OS Tree 2, and the first one it booted to a black screen after an update.
Oh, wow.
It could have been an NVIDIA related issue.
Yeah.
And all I did was I just selected the second image and then made that the default. Solved.
That's a great way to put together a system, right? And what will happen is in those systems, your home directory is mutable. You can do whatever you want in your home directory, but like the system directory, like all the folders outside of there are locked. They're mounted as read-only. And that makes a very stable system. However, if you've used that kind of thing, well, how are you supposed to install stuff then? Like, obviously, if you install Flatpak on top of it, right? Like, that's fine. But like, what if you wanted to install some kind of system level thing? Well, then we get into these weird, like, well, spool up another container. Like it's just containers all the way down, and or the OS RPM OS tree thing where it's like you're branching it, and there's like layers. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
transparency layers on top of it, and these all work. But I believe it's my opinion that those are all hacks. And so
Oh, okay.
what NixOS lets you do is NixOS is almost like, bear with me, it's almost like Arch Linux, right? Arch Linux, you don't look at Arch Linux as here's like an opinionated desktop. Well, it's here's a bin of Legos. You snap them together however you like, right? So imagine Arch and something immutable like Fedora Silverblue had a baby, right? What NixOS lets you do is NixOS lets you declare what is in that base image. So you are in charge of building that base image. So it's still immutable, but you get to choose what's in there. And when you update or rebuild your NixOS, you're basically just rebuilding your core system against that config file, but you declare it.
And that config file is essentially your entire build, right? It seems like it would be advantageous to someone like me who's constantly hopping around from computer to computer, but wants the same.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to have to reinstall everything.
You're going to be an
I don't really even want to have to use a script to do it. I just want to install it and it's all there already.
Yep.
It's all just pre-configured and...
So, yep. When I was doing the Arch thing, when I was arching that chapter of my Linux life, I remember I had a Git repo that had like a bunch of shell scripts on like, so I would install bare Arch and then I would run the script and it would set everything up for me.
And that's not a bad solution.
No, that's not a bad solution. But here's the problem. You run that script and then you realize like a month later, like, oh, I had to add these other things in there, right? You should go back and update that script, but do you?
No, you do not.
Of course you don't.
You just add it manually because
you just add it manually, and then
it's just that one thing.
But then the next time you use that script, you're like, wait, where's my Git Kraken? You're like, oh, right, I didn't put it in my script, right? NixOS makes you do that. You have to put it in your config if you want it in your system. Some people say it's a pain in the butt to have to do that, but to me, I'm like, you're forcing yourself to self-document it. And so now in Git, like in my GitHub, I have my entire system set up, complete with PHP, complete with all my dev stuff, complete with all the apps I want, right? And so I can trash pick a laptop, install NixOS on there, clone my repo, type NixOS rebuild, go get a coffee, and by the time I come back, my system's set up and ready to go. So here I am giving out Linux Mint computers to people because they're easy to use and, blah, blah, blah. But I am falling in love with NixOS. And then I'm seeing these shortcomings with Linux Mint, right? Like people don't do updates. And it also takes me a bit of time. I think the defaults on Linux Mint are a little goofy. So I'm doing a bit of customization to Mint when I do these things, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the Mint update that in their software store, they filtered out unverified Flatpaks. I don't know if you've heard about this.
I haven't actually. I haven't. I was out of the daily news cycle for quite a while, for like 2 or 3 years.
So Linux Mint pushed an update where you go to the software store and you type in something like Zoom, right? You're like, oh, I want to install Zoom. Well, the Zoom Flatpak isn't owned by the Zoom Corporation or whatever. It's a community member who is repackaging it. There's a whole lot of that happening. But those are technically unverified Flatpaks, Oh,
I see. And it says right there on FlatHub, the ownership of the Zoom app ID has not been verified and may be a community package. There's got to be many major apps that are unverified, then, right?
There's a ton. And I get why they did it, right? Because they're trying to add a little bit of safety blanket in there. But what happens is it brings us back to a point where people don't think that there's any software on Linux.
Oh, man.
So, and for a distribution like Linux Mint, who's supposed to be like the on-ramp for people to get into Linux, when they install Linux Mint and they type in Zoom and they don't see it there, they think, okay, well, I guess
I have to go back to Windows or macOS now.
I guess this stuff doesn't work on Linux.
Oh, that's not good.
At the same time, I'm in love with NixOS. And I thought, because it's so declarative, could I build a distro basically using NixOS? Because that's what NixOS lets you do essentially. With these declarative config files, everyone gets to have their own bespoke distro, right?
It's Mike's operating system.
It's
basically.
I mean, it's NixOS, but it's a NixOS configuration, loaded up in there. And so I started playing around with this idea of like, could I rebuild Linux Mint in NixOS and make it and build in a lot of these things that I like a lot of the defaults, FlatHub integration. And then can I also build in automatic updates that happen in the background? And because of how, again, I don't want to geek out too much about this, but like how NixOS works is that you can rebuild the system, right? It does like a NixOS rebuild. And you can say, I want to switch to that new rebuild right away. Or you can say, I want to switch to that on the next reboot.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and obviously if you're just adding something really quick and you just want to see it right away, you do switch. But if you're doing something big, like switching out the kernel or desktop environment, you want to pass in the boot flag. So you're like, don't break my system.
Right.
So like when I reboot, I'll reboot into that new image that has all this stuff in it. And you can have these updates happen, like Flatpak updates can happen whenever they want. They're easy, they're hot swappable, but like that happens like in the background. And then as far as the system updates, they happen automatically. And these are all just systemd jobs that I scripted into the NixOS config. So I have systemd jobs that every week will run a NixOS rebuild boot in the background, and I even give it like a low CPU and IO priority, so like you can still use your system.
It's not intrusive at all.
Yeah. And you get a little notification saying, "Hey, system updates are happening, but don't worry about it. Just keep doing your thing." And again, what's nice about NixOS is that, like, let's say somebody pulls the power plug, or like gets disconnected from the internet, or like their battery dies, right? Like, oh no, you were in the middle of a system update. It's fine because NixOS won't apply the update until it's compiled, checked, and ready to go.
Perfect.
So again, these are the safety precautions that we get with immutable distros, and NixOS has that too. So again, it's nice to have this kind of like built-in thing. So every week there's an update that runs in the background, and after the update is done, I just get a little notification that says, "Hey, system updates are done. Reboot the computer whenever you get a chance." Doesn't matter. They can keep using it. It's fine. They're not in some weird broken state. And then when they reboot, they're in the new update. Now, you might say, okay, great. But what about the next major version? So NixOS has these things called channels. So in your config, you just say, hey, I want Firefox. You don't say, I want Firefox 85 or whatever. You know what I mean? You're not declaring the version of the thing you want. You're just declaring what you want. So the version of what you get depends on what NixOS channel that you're tuned to. So how you update your NixOS system is there is no like interface to be like, go through a wizard and stuff like that. It's a lot simpler than that. You'd say, all right, well, I'm tuned into the 25.05 channel, which tells me what version of systemd, what version of this, right? But now I'm just going to switch my channel to 25.11 and then rebuild the system against the same config. It's the same config. And so
the user has to manually switch that channel, or
in a typical NixOS setup, like me running NixOS, yes, I manually change my channel, do a rebuild, deal with any issues that kind of might come up. Sometimes the language changes a little bit or an option changes,
but they're not getting the typical NixOS.
They're certainly not. No, they're certainly not. Because again, what I'm doing with NixBook is basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to combine Linux Mint with Chromebooks using NixOS. Like, could I combine all those things together and make something that like could just work for regular people? And I think I did it. So the cool thing is that I can, in testing, switch to channel 25.11, do a rebuild, test everything out, make sure everything's good. My kids are testers and guinea pigs. They will run on testing branch for a while. And then all I have to do is push that config to main And then every NixBook that's online within a week will download that new thing, rebuild against the new channel, and then the next time they reboot, they're on 25.11. And it's all been tested because I've tested it, like, so so people can jump major versions without even realizing it. They won't. They won't realize it.
Yeah.
It's seamless. It's just like any other update. And again, I haven't seen a distro be able to do this like NixOS because you're rebuilding against this config file. So like, it doesn't matter what versions of stuff. It's all the same. It's cool.
I don't know if I wouldn't call it risk-free operating system experience,
right.
but it significantly free of paper cuts and opportunities, free of opportunities for people to accidentally mess up.
They really can't break it. Now, again, it's limiting in the fact
unbreakable.
It's
NixBook OS, unbreakable.
It kind of is unbreakable. I mean, like, if obviously, like, there's limitations, right? So, like, here's the trade-off is that there's guardrails. So, like, people like me and you will be like, oh, like, and obviously it's just NixOS in the end of the day. So you could add your own stuff in there and make NixBook your own thing, right? But like a standard user is like not going to be able to like switch their version of systemd or the kernel or whatever, you know what I mean? But that's fine.
But a standard user doesn't want to do that
exactly.
anyway,
so it's not for, the NixBook is not for Linux nerds. It's for the friends and families of Linux nerds who don't want to support them, right? It's like, hey, here's a computer that will just work. You just update, you just open it, use it, it'll update itself and reboot it every once. Like I always tell people just reboot about once a month, and it'll run forever. And that's true. Like,
okay.
And that has been true so far.
What can they install on their own? They can
anything.
They can use FlatHub.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything on FlatHub.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, just big shout out to like FlatHub and like all that integration, right? Because like that has been key, right? And again, you think, well, between FlatHub and anything web based, dude, that covers almost all of what you need. My son is like 9 now. He's getting into developing, like writing games. He wants to write games. So like he's got like GDevelop and like Godot and like he's like literally doing development stuff and it's just Flatpaks. Like it's fine. He's on a NixBook. So it's like you can do quite a bit. Like if you want Spotify, go for it. Steam is a Flatpak now, right? So you could just install Steam and go for it.
What's the median age of these computers?
I think, I go by kind of like what stickers on there, right? And so at first, when I first did it,
Windows Vista.
Oh yeah,
probably right. You probably get some of those.
I've gotten some XP ones. It's actually kind of a fun. Selfishly, it's kind of a fun tinkerer thing to do to get these people just donating all these machines, and you're like, oh, I remember this computer. I remember this computer, right? So there's some classics that people have donated too. It is my dream to get like a box of ThinkPads, though. That would be chef's kiss.
So
anyway, so most of these laptops these days coming in are like kind of stickered, like they're like Windows 8, and getting into Windows 10.
You're kind of looking at the minimum system requirements for Linux Mint, and is that kind of a good baseline?
Yeah. So what I do is, and in fact, actually, we come in resource-wise, we come in lower than Linux Mint. I don't know why. Yeah, NixOS is pretty minimalistic by default. It's like Arch, right? Where it's like we're not going to assume we know what you want on your system. You tell us what you want. But I always do, like for NixBook, I have like the rule of 4s. So I want 4 gigs. I want to see 4 gigs of RAM, 4 cores, right? And that can be a dual core that's threaded to 4. Like as long as there's 4, kind of. If you run HTOP and you see 4, my kids call them brains. If it's got 4 brains, then that's good too. And of course, the solid state drive is a lot nicer. Than a spinning Rust. However, I have rehomed a bunch of these with spinning Rust drives as well, and they take a minute to boot up, but they're fine. I have a NixBook Lite version as well, and in fact, we have a dedicated installer now that you can just download an ISO and run it. So you don't even have to manually install NixOS anymore. NixBook has its own installer, which is awesome. And you can choose between NixBook and NixBook Lite. NixBook Lite is just Cinnamon, but it's stripped down a little bit more, and it just has Firefox, and there's no FlatHub integration. So it's basically just like a Firefox book.
Like less visual effects, things like that.
It's a netbook. Yeah. It's
okay. So the rule of twos, right?
Yeah,
Dual core, 2 gigs.
That's right.
Okay.
It says that in the installer too. Yeah. So if I have a system that's like kind of a dog, it's like a Celeron with like 2 gigs of RAM, and I'm like, I can install NixBook Lite on there, and it's still a web friendly device. And my rule of thumb is like I won't give something out unless I can get onto it. Boots up within a few minutes, and I can get onto YouTube and I can stream a video without it dropping frames like crazy, right? Like, to me, that's kind of my litmus test. Like, if it can do that, then I think it can be useful to somebody.
If it can do that, it's useful to a lot of people.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, you can get these like I get so many of these. They're these HP streams. They're like these
yeah.
They're
I
total.
know what you're talking about.
They're total. They were probably garbage when they were brand new.
With like the 32 or 64 gig eMMC. Yeah.
That's right. Those actually upcycle to NixBooks. Great. I mean, they're not fast.
I would love.
They're totally usable.
I would absolutely love to see an actual performance comparison between Windows 10 S. Is that what it was called? I don't know. Windows 10 S mode and NixBook OS. I'd love to see that. That'd be fun. A little fun video to do. So you've designed NixBook OS, and you have this growing project.
Yep.
This pay it forward computer project. What happens next? Because it sounds like it can turn into a monster. It did turn into a monster.
Like, I'm just happy that I built this OS that like my kids can use, and I can slap it on these computers and give them out to people, and like they can just go on about their merry way, and it's great. But it's building momentum. Like, the local library chain even did like they reached out to me and they wanted to do an interview, and we did they hosted an event basically telling people about computer upcycling and that they don't need to throw their computer in the trash. This is kind of fun. Every talk I do, every event I do, I always bring laptops and give them away. Yeah. And so I spoke at the Siegel conference here in Seattle, and I had 5 HP ProBooks that were all NixBooks, and like gave them out at the talk. And it's fun because people think, oh my God, I can't, but like I get them for free. Like, this is the point of the project, is that like these things are just out there. And so anyway, it's been gaining so much momentum. Even my wife got really interested in it too, where she's like, man, this is really important. Like, so she came to my talk at the local library and just saw how just drop dead amazed people were at what was possible here. And then even people in the crowd being like, what about Norton antivirus? I'm like, no.
Do I need Norton antivirus? Oh,
no,
man.
No, you don't. And they're just like, but how? And I'm like, oh, my sweet people, like, you have not tasted the nectars that are available to us. Like, it's so awesome. I think this hits so many things for people, right? Like, everyone I talk to gets really excited about this, and it makes sense, right? Because we're reducing waste. So this is, people hate seeing stuff thrown away. At least I do. And I think most people do, right? They're like, hey, here's this perfectly usable computer, but I got to throw it in the garbage because Microsoft pulled support or Apple pulled support for it, right? People hate that crap. The second is, I think most people, they want certain rights. Like, I believe that everyone in this day and age, in 2025, should have access to a basic working computer. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's a right that
there are enough of them out there.
And there's enough of them out there, right? So I think people could get behind that idea too.
But
right?
not if they have to run Windows 11.
No, of course not. So, right. So I think like people hate seeing waste. They love seeing people like be able to get helped out, right? And then the third thing that this project seems to do is stick a finger in the eye of big tech. And it's just fun. It's fun to be like, yeah, to hell with you, Microsoft and Apple. Like, one of my favorite machines to get are these beautiful iMacs, the mid 2010 iMacs.
That's beautiful hardware.
They're beautiful hardware, and they have been outcast by Apple for like years. And so I get a lot of them for free because people are like, I don't know what to do with this thing, right? And so I'll upcycle them I'll SSD them if they're not already SSD'd, and put NixBook on them, and they fly, and they're beautiful. And now it actually gets to sit on someone's desk and be used like as a daily driver.
My mom has a 2016 iMac.
Yeah,
and
great.
it's almost useless with macOS on there now.
There you go. Well, I have the answer for you.
Useless.
Yeah. And the cool thing is in the NixBook installer, big shout out to like there's Matteo and Rajas. There's two guys on my GitHub that have been just rock stars with helping because NixBook's an open source project. It's not just me anymore doing this. Like there's other people contributing, which is awesome. And these guys have been rock stars in like developing our own standalone installer. And so we have a NixBook installer that's a true live environment of NixBook and an installer. And the cool thing is, you know how Broadcom drivers are always a pain in the butt?
Oh, yeah.
Guess
you have to do the whole, third party. Then you have to add the secure boot key because you're doing that. And it's
so Apple's the worst with this, right? Like all them and MacBook Airs and Pros and iMacs have the Broadcom drivers. So you need a third party Wi-Fi chip just for the install, and then after the install you can fix it. But
that's such a barrier for so many people too.
Yeah, and so
that's a deal breaker.
So now NixBook has those drivers pre-installed in the installer and in the installed system. So now you can literally just grab the ISO, burn it to a USB, whack it in your Mac, hold down the option key, boot to it, and
whack it in your Mac. I love the way that sounds.
Mac. Yeah,
whack it in your Mac.
Whack it in your Mac. I like that.
It maybe sounds a little dirty too.
It does.
But
yeah, and it has just grown into such a movement that like my wife, who is just Erin, who's a rock star, like she's like, no, this is ridiculous. We need to make this an actual thing. And so she put together a board. So we have a board now, and just yesterday we got approved for a nonprofit status. So now the computer...
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So now congratulations on that.
The Computer Upcycle Project is now a registered nonprofit in the state of Washington.
Wow.
And that's going to open up so many doors for us, which is really, really cool.
What kind of doors? When just for some background for people watching and listening, when you first mentioned this to me, it resonated so deeply because I used to do this thing called Pay It Forward builds in association with AMD, where a friend and I would we would have components donated to us by various by AMD, by Kingston, by Samsung, whoever. We would build the PC, and then we would actually give them to people who needed a gaming PC. And I know need a gaming PC is kind of, who needs a gaming PC? But it was people in the community, AMD's Red Team, their fans and things like that who, couldn't afford a decent gaming computer, and they were all the parts were getting donated. So me and my friend, we donated our time, built them, did a live stream of it, and then gave it away. And I instantly wanted to get involved with the Computer Upcycle Project when you mentioned it to me, because it's just, I love tinkering with old hardware. I love the satisfaction, the reward of like being able to give someone a good usable computer that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, and anyway. So what kind of doors could this open? There's
a big computer shop locally here in Olympia. Everyone in Olympia knows it. It's called the Fourth Dimension. And it's they sell new computers, but they also are a repair shop. They're mostly, I think they do repairs. And so I was talking to the owner last week, and I said, hey, what happens when somebody comes in, they bring their computer in, and it's like, you tell them like it's just old, like you can't get on the Windows 11, like they're not going to install Linux on it. I know that. And so they'll sell them a new computer, right? And they're like, well, we throw them in the back, and every couple weeks I call the recycling guy, and he comes and takes them, and they crush them up and melt them down or whatever. And so I told him about what we're doing in the Computer Upcycle Project, and he goes, well, I'll tell you what. He goes, as soon as you get your nonprofit status, come in, give me a copy of it, and I'll call you before I call the recycling guy. You can come into the back room, take what you want, and then the recycling guy can take the rest. And
And it
And he
makes
goes,
no
"No."
difference to the shop, right? To the
Yeah,
fourth
no, they don't
dimension,
care.
because
It's not taking money out of their pocket, and in fact, it's helping. And now they can, PR wise too, they can say they're partnered with the Computer Upcycle Project in Olympia, and like,
that's a good look.
it's a good
Yeah.
look. So like, if we do
Oh,
these events and we say like, hey, I have a computer, where can I drop it off to? I don't give them my personal home address and like drop it off my porch, right? Like now I can say, yeah, you can take it to fourth dimension. They'll accept it on our behalf. That's huge, right? And that doesn't happen if I'm just Mike Kelly. Like that
right.
happens when I'm
Right.
Mike Kelly of the Computer Upcycle Project.
Sure.
And we also got recently 100 computers from OliFed, a local bank chain, and this bank chain just did a big refresh of their tech, and they had over 100 computers, and that they were just going to
So 100
recycle.
computers and one drop laptops, I'm assuming?
They're a mix. They're a mix of like
Oh,
the
okay.
small
Okay.
form factors now
Yeah.
the laptops are easy to rehome. Like that's already in process. But the small form factor computers, we're still not sure what we're going to do with them. I'm working on a NixBook kiosk mode, and we have this idea of having public access computers in coffee shops and places.
Dude.
Like, and that is just,
So awesome.
that is just funded by the Computer Upcycle Project. And we can build NixBook in a way that it's self-healing and they don't have to worry about maintenance of it. That would be awesome.
So you get a call and they're like, yeah, we've got 100 computers for you. What then? Is that just Mike Kelly spending days repurposing 100 computers by himself, or?
Yeah. So, right now, most of them are in storage in this office. And so, yeah, I kind of like chip away at them as I can, like it is my hobby, right? Like some people will read or do crossword puzzles or do all this other stuff. Me, I am always working on a computer. Like I'll have conversations with people while working on a computer. It's cathartic for me, I suppose. But yes, it can't scale with just me doing it. And so that's another thing with this nonprofit is like, we're going to be able to do things like we have already set up the stage, like the room I'm in now. This is a co-working office. Like, we can rent this out and we can have like install parties. Cause I've also had other tech people reach out to me and say, hey, I want to get involved. Like if you were local, you would totally come to a Linux install party
I totally would.
Where we have a pile of computers and we're like, hey, Jason, here's the USB drive. We're going to.
In fact, there's some really great hiking near Olympia. So,
there is.
I could find an excuse.
I'm telling you, anytime you want to come, we'll have a good time. But yeah. And so there's people that want to get involved in it too. And so like, I do think that we can do this. And then instead of giving computers away one at a time, we actually want to have events where like, we're doing stuff. And so we've already done this once. And actually that's the picture that got you so fired up on Mastodon is we did an event at this, low income housing where we brought a handful of NixBooks to let people use them and see how see how they liked it. Like what did they get tripped up on or whatever. And 100% of people had zero problem with it. They loved it.
That's amazing.
And they all got to take those computers home. So we like trained them on how to use it, although it didn't take much to train.
Right.
Like I said, it's pretty boring and easy. And so those people got new computers, and that was it. And the directors of the low income housing were like, this is incredible. Can we do this again? I'm like, yeah, sure. We got a bunch of computers. So we're doing it again next week where we're giving, I think, like 10 or 15 more away, and doing a class with it as well. So like digital, training on like, here's the basic stuff. Like if you download a file, where does it go? That kind of stuff.
Sure.
What really fired me up about that is like seeing those people who are just total tech newbies, right? Like they are not technical in any way, shape, or form. And that's not a criticism. They're just regular folks. Seeing them open up a NixBook, turn it on, just start using it without any knowledge or training, knowing that like all the updates will be automatic, everything's handled for them, and they can't break it. It's an immutable, unbreakable system. Go wild. And to see those people use Linux and to see them just have a perfectly good time, just it hits me in a place.
Well, they do know that they're not using Windows though, right?
Kind of. I remember one time someone reached out to me and they said, "Oh, Mike, can you help me with this computer?" And I thought, oh, okay, it's a Linux problem, right? And she goes, "Listen, I hate to say this, but like I let my brother borrow my laptop. He put Windows 10 back on there because he's like, oh, I'll
No,
fix it for you. And he put Windows back on
no,
there.
it was already fixed.
It was already fixed. So she messages me and she goes, I am so pissed at him for doing that. She goes, can you please put Windows Mint back on there?
Windows Mint.
Yeah, she called it
Windows
Mint.
Mint.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which both made me so proud, but also broke my heart a little bit. But like, I was like, I will do it. I will put Windows Mint back on there for you. I don't care.
If they do have a question though, where do they go for support?
I mean, so far, like, and so that's another thing I do is all the NixBooks, I actually give out a getting started guide, and it's a PDF on the desktop, but I also print it out for people as well because people love stuff printed out. And it has like just the basics, like here's where to go to hook to your Wi-Fi, here's where to go to change your font scaling if you want, like whatever.
Wow.
It's just basic stuff people need, but it has my email address on there as well. Yeah, it's been a little bit of an informal feedback process. But again, most people just haven't had an issue.
I would assume, like, you've given 1,500 of these computers away, that you're inundated with support requests of some kind. And that's a testament to the stability of it.
If I gave away 1,500 Windows computers, you know how busy I'd be? But
it'd be a full-time job, probably.
Yeah,
that's not an exaggeration either. I can't escape the idea that, you know, you've single-handedly, pretty much single-handedly have upcycled 1,500 of these computers in just your local community.
Yep.
And if it was possible to scale that up statewide, the impact you could have on people, the impact you could have on the environment, right? I mean, you know, the quality of life that people have, that's got to happen somehow.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
if people can just like, I want to take this and franchise it out. Boom, it's now in my city. I don't know.
Well, that's a big part of like what NixBook is about. The whole reason I wanted to build this is to help myself, but also I want other people to do this. And I've had multiple people in other places of the world and country say, hey, I want to do this, but like the big hang up I always had was like, I don't know what distro to put on there, and I don't want to support them. Like, they don't want to have to go over and like update dad's Fedora every 6 months. They don't want to do that. And so NixBook is a tool in that like goal, that mission of like, let's save as many computers as possible. So all you have to do is be a technical enough person to turn off secure boot, like change the boot order, you know what I mean? And like install this, and it should be dummy proof from then on. And the fact that it even comes with a guide that you can print out and give somebody, like those tools are now there. That's the whole point of NixBook, and the whole experience that we're doing is that like it can enable me, but it can enable people like me to do this anywhere.
Because there's got to be, I don't have the current data, but I mean, there has to be millions of computers per year getting melted down or just taking up space in a landfill.
Yeah. On average, in America, at least on average, every 4 years is the lifespan of most people's computer. Most people get a new computer every 4 years, and corporate's the same. So if you think about
I have a computer back here that I bought off of eBay for $300. It's a Intel i5 6600, 8 gigs of RAM, terabyte hard drive, Radeon RX 570.
Yeah.
And it screams. It's so the newest part in there is from 2017. So it's 8 years old.
Yeah.
And it absolutely screams.
Yeah. And that's another reason I wanted to get the nonprofit too, so we could actually go after grants and get some funding. Because, one of the things that we got 100 computers from the bank, which is fantastic, but none of them have hard drives. They were all pulled and destroyed as per policy.
Well, sure. And that's
sense.
the thing is you don't want financial barriers like that to prevent
and
this from moving forward.
Right. And so, and you can get bulk small SSDs for like $10 a pop now, which is great. And
what about RAM?
Well, the funny you
Hopefully
say.
you don't need to buy new RAM for these.
The funny part is about that. I'll have to send you a picture of my bucket of RAM. Actually, multiple buckets because I have them broken out by type and
Oh, definitely
size.
don't give people your address now
Yeah, right.
because they're probably sitting on a gold mine.
And there's a bunch of computers that like didn't make it, right? Like they had water damage, or the motherboard was bad, or had
Mhm.
some kind of kiss of death, right? Where it just wouldn't boot up. And it's like I don't waste too much time on those computers, but what I do is I part them out for spare parts and then e-cycle the
Oh,
carcass,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
So I've done that enough times where I have such a bin of spare parts. I got NVMe drives, I got RAM in every type you can imagine. I pull out the LCDs on most of these as well.
Oh,
And in over a dozen cases, I've been able to reuse an LCD, a screen, in another laptop.
this might not have happened yet, but I guarantee it will. But have you had people reach out directly and go, like, just directly say, I want to do this. How do I get started?
Yes, I have, locally, and I'm from East Coast originally, so I still have a bunch of friends and family over there too. And again, one of the things is like people are like, oh, like either they want a laptop or they want to give me laptops, right? But they live on the other side of the country, and it's like shipping these things isn't cheap.
No,
And so
no.
like really to make this sustainable and smart, it needs to be done at
Locally.
the location, right? So I do. I mean, I have some nerdier friends back east who are like, I want to do this too. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to make a blueprint for this
Mm-hmm.
type of thing.
Absolutely. Gosh. I mean, you have built something very remarkable and very impactful. And I really hope that other people can you know, take the learning lessons that you've had and the experience and just blow this thing up in a good way. In a good way.
In a good way, yeah. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like none of this would be possible without NixOS. No, none of it would be possible without like the people that donate. None of it would be possible without like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much that goes into this, and that's why I get so people are like, you made an operating system? I'm like, well, kind of. Like,
Well,
I mean, I curated it. I put something together. But again, more and more as we go, like we're writing, like I'm actually getting into like writing Python GTK apps for like the welcome screen and like allowing people to like go through. And so like more and more NixBook is having more code in it that's unique to NixBook, right? But at the end
does
of
it
the day, we're still downstream from NixOS, and I think that's great. We're
hmm.
inheriting a huge legacy of like just amazing stuff by amazing people, and then the open source is amazing, and I have people smarter than me helping me put all this together too, and so it's awesome.
Now, if people want to just go play around with NixBook OS, is there a formal site for it yet?
There is. It launched yesterday. So NixBookOS.org
Oh,
is.
so you had a very busy day yesterday.
I had a very busy day yesterday.
NixBook OS, NixBookOS.org.
That's right. And
Okay.
then it's very simple. Like we're going to add more to it, but like by default, it's a link to download the ISO, which is the newest 25.11 with the Broadcom drivers built in. So that's our newest ISO. And then it's a link to the GitHub page where you can go ahead and raise issues, do pull request, whatever you want, all the
Nice.
GitHubby stuff.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So it's really cool. And
I'm going to have to play with it. I need to find a system to play with it on, but I can, yeah.
yeah. And then we also launched the computer upcycle project.org as well. And right now that's just a newsletter sign up because we're, getting that built out as well. But if anyone wants to stay in the loop of like what's happening with the nonprofit, like events that we're doing, stuff we're putting together, computerupcycleproject.org is also up. We did this donation. There's another nonprofit in the area that does some of this. And I volunteered to help them do like an e-cycling event where people drop off all electronics, not just computers, but all kind of disposable electronics. And they took ads out on the radio and they put stuff in the newspaper for this. And it was slammed. There was like 2 semi trucks basically of stuff. Yeah. They had to call an extra truck down. And this is in Olympia, Washington, right?
So Olympia, what, population about 60,000 people?
Yes, I don't know. You tell me.
I live in a larger city. Wow. I think it proves that almost any community could benefit from this type of project.
Again,
no matter the size.
When I started this, I really assumed that there was only going to be a handful of people that were even interested in this.
Sure.
And it has blown me away how much need there is out there, but not how much need, how much excess is out there too, how much waste and how much need. We can link the two together with Linux.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. Awesome.
It truly is Linux for everyone.
Linux for everyone. This is the dream.
Yeah.
And you're helping make it happen. God, I got to get involved. I got to do something. I want to get involved in this. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to have to play with it. I hope you don't get inundated. I hope you do, actually. I hope a whole lot of people hear this and watch this and reach out to you with questions and, opportunities maybe, or I think that enthusiasm can be contagious, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for this project. So
yeah, I do. I mean, anyone who wants to get involved, by all means, you can copy what I'm doing. You could fork the project. You could play around with NixBook, and then obviously, bust my balls if something's not working right or needs to be better or something. Like, I think this is the beauty of open source as well, is that we can all work on this stuff together. I think just the realization, if anybody takes anything away from this, it's the realization that there is a ton of waste out there that's happening every day all around us. And then B, there is a huge need for working basic computers. And those people aren't going to be picky about what OS they're on. They're just going to want something that works. And we have all the ingredients to fix this problem.
Yeah, it's just getting organized and getting it deployed and getting, what you're doing, the Computer Upcycle Project, can literally benefit every community in the country. There's no question about that.
I believe so. Yeah. Yep. So
it's been a blast talking to you about this. And I hope that maybe a year from now we can circle back and you can tell me, about how there's a Computer Upcycle Project in every state. And you never know. The 1,500 is now 150,000,
I've heard stories from people that have reached out to me years after I've gave them a computer, and they've said, listen, Mike, I just want to say thanks again. Like, I was able to apply for a job and get it and get off the street. I've had people reach out, like they were getting out of recovery from drugs or just in bad life circumstances. And they needed some kind of help, right? Like just something, just a break somewhere to help break that cycle. And an old laptop was what broke it for them. And that's amazing. So we can do that.